Hey everyone, I'm Ryan.
I'm Alex.
And today we're starting a new series which is going to be called Rank 'em. Pretty much we're taking a look at anything, whether it be video games, music, movies, whatever we can think of, and we're just going to rank them. We're going to take a bunch of things and put them in our order, compare our orders, and have a little discussion about it.
Yeah, so we're just going to take a band and sort their albums, or we'll take a movie series and rank their movies, something like that.
Pretty much. And we're starting off today with a band that we're both a fan of, and that is Slipknot.
Yeah, we're both a fan. We haven't gotten to see them yet because we were too busy last year to make the trip.
Thanks, work.
Yeah.
I mean, they really only have 5 albums, so it shouldn't be that long.
Yeah, 5 studio albums, so we got this.
Alright, so I guess I'll start with my number 5 pick, which is Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses.
What a coincidence. My number 5 is also Volume 3.
Wow, that is so weird. But yeah, pretty much the main reason this is my lowest album is it feels way too commercial. It feels way too easily produced. It's radio friendly.
Yeah.
Like, some of the songs are good, but it's so different than the other albums. It was just a drastic 180 from the album that came before it, which you'll see much later in my list.
Yeah, like, this album, like, I joke and I say, oh yeah, you know, Volume 3 is my favorite Stone Sour album, but it really is kind of indicative of what they kind of wanted to do with lighter vocals, or maybe what Corey wanted to do with lighter vocals, because it still has good riffs.
Oh, it does.
It is still overall lighter, but it does still have good riffs. And I just find it does still have some heavy vocals.
I'm not hating on this album. There are quite a few songs on this album that I do like.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, we were over the fact that we really like Vermilion. I really like Duality.
I like The Blister Exists.
Blister Exists is great as well.
3-0. Yeah, like, all pretty good songs.
Yeah.
Like, you have songs like Before I Forget, which, looking back, aren't great. I'll be honest, Before I Forget is the first song I ever heard from Slipknot. So
oh, yeah. Same.
I think almost everyone.
Because it was in Guitar Hero 3 and it was very commercially popular.
Because it was in Guitar Hero. But
so, I mean, it at least it got people into Slipknot.
Yeah, so that pretty much both of our opinions are the exact same on this album.
It's fine, but it's still kind of boring and light.
All right, so our number 4 pick.
Yeah.
Mine is All Hope Is Gone.
Mine's Iowa.
Okay.
You want to explain first?
All right, yeah, pretty much with All Hope Is Gone, I felt they continued what they did in Volume 3 with a more commercial sound, but it did become a bit better. You have songs like Psychosocial, which is fantastic. It's actually one of their best songs. But they also have songs like Sulfur, and I really like the title track, All Hope Is Gone, as well. You also see the other songs like Snuff, which I think is almost taken right off of the Stone Sour album.
Yeah.
And it just pretty much, it sounds like Volume 3, but just a little bit heavier and just a little bit more Slipknot. And your opinion on Iowa?
Well, my opinion on Iowa, I know by most it's seen as a number 1 Slipknot album. And I can see your reaction. I know it's your. I don't know. I don't want to give spoilers, but I know it's high up there for you.
It's up there.
It's up there. I know. I don't know. Like, maybe it's because I didn't listen to it when it first came out, or maybe it's because I just prefer a litter. Like, I don't prefer like their super light stuff, and I don't even start listening to Stone Sour until very recent. So it's not even that I prefer like a lighter style or a Stone Sour type style. Just going back and listening to 2, other than like some great hits off of it, the rest of the album, it just doesn't really do anything for me. I don't want to say that I get bored while listening to the rest of the album, but I would just other than like, you know, the big ones like obviously Heretic Anthem and People Equal Shit and stuff like that. Other than those like a few songs, I just kind of feel like everything else just kind of blends in.
Right.
And maybe it's because I also, when I recently listened to it, I listened to it right after 1. And then listening to it after 1, I was just kind of like, you know, 2 has, like, some of the standouts from 2 are arguably better than some standouts from 1, and that's personal opinion. But then everything else, it didn't feel as strong as everything else from 1 for me.
That's fair. So I guess moving on to our number 3 picks. My number 3 pick is the most recent Slipknot album, which is Point 5, The Great Chapter.
My number 3 is All Hope Is Gone.
Okay, yeah. So the reason I like Point 5, The Great Chapters, is probably becoming clear, is I like the heavier side of Slipknot. I like the more aggressive style. But I found Point 5 is almost like a perfect mix between the softer sounds of Volume 3 and All Hope Is Gone and the heavier sounds of their first two albums. It does work quite well, and it's actually quite a pleasant surprise considering it was so long since the album before.
Yeah.
You have songs like Custer, which are incredibly heavy and hard, but then you also have songs like The Devil and I, which is not as aggressive, but still really good.
Yeah. So for All Hope Is Gone, for me, for a while, it was honestly my favorite Slipknot album. When I was getting into Slipknot, it was around the time that All Hope Is Gone came out, and that wasn't really the only reason that it was my favorite album, because I did listen to their other stuff when I started to get into them. I just preferred All Hope Is Gone overall more, because, like you were saying, that it's pretty much their softer, like just like Volume 3, but it's a little bit harder. I thought that almost everything on that album, like I could get into almost every single song. I liked that they kind of, how to describe it properly, like it's not that it's not like their first two albums were, just scattered noise all over the place, but it almost feels like the songs were concise. Like, yeah, it was probably a lot more accessible and a lot more radio friendly and stuff like that, but I always found everything to be very catchy. I like the big hits off of that album are easily among my favorite songs, and at the end of the day, I just have a soft spot for it because I listen to it so much, and that's why I find it so hard to, even going back and trying to listen to it objectively and saying I'm going to rank all 5 Slipknot albums, I can't go back to 4 and rank it very low. Like, it was going to be my number 2 before I changed my mind on this, and I decided to put it down at number 3.
Alright, speak about number 2. My pick for number 2 is the first Slipknot album, their self-titled Slipknot.
That is also my number 2.
Yeah. This is like a really good introduction to the band, their style. It's heavy, it's crazy, it's pretty much just pure insanity.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, you open up with a song like Sick, which is my favorite off that album. It really just kind of shows you exactly what to expect before having songs like Spit It Out, Surfacing. Even Wait and Bleed, even though it's kind of overplayed, is still a really good song.
Yeah, it definitely is overplayed, but I think it's one of the ones that's overplayed for a reason. Like, yes, there are some other songs, even off of that album, that I wouldn't mind if it got more playtime. But, yeah, I definitely agree with you that it's a really good introduction to their style, and that it is, like, an overall just very high energy, very, heavy album all around. So, like, me thinking about one is, and I just recently decided that I wanted to make this my number 2 instead of my number 3, just because it really set the bar for what Slipknot was going to be.
Yeah.
And, it introduced their style, and, it's what made them big. Yeah. And it was for a good reason, because it was a great album.
Yeah. So now our number 1 picks, which, if you know Slipknot's discography, you probably can already tell by now, but my number 1 pick is Iowa.
And my number 1 pick is Point 5, The Great Chapter.
Now, the reason I have Iowa, and to kind of counter what you said about you found it to pretty much sound all the same and kind of get boring at parts, I kind of agree with that, where it does keep the same style throughout the entire album. However, for me, that style is my favorite style that Slipknot has done. Okay. I like the loud, aggressive, just angry sounds of that album. Like, songs like People Equal Shit, Disaster, Peace, My Plague, Everything Ends, and my personal favorite Slipknot song ever with the Heretic Anthem. I just love the styles and the approach they took to this album, and that's why I have it as my number 1 Slipknot album.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fair. And most people agree with it, but my number 1 pick was The Great Chapter, just because I really felt it was a perfect combination of all of Slipknot's style. I felt it was the perfect combination of they had some of the crazy songs from the style of 1 and 2, and then it had some of the lighter stuff that would be the style of of 3 and 4. But yet the lighter ones still felt heavy enough that you didn't feel like you were getting cheaped out. It didn't feel like they weren't trying to capture their original style. Now, Great Chapter was made after the death of Paul Gray, obviously, and it's a shame how all these bands always have these great albums that come out after band members die. I mean, Avenged Sevenfold did it a few years ago, and then Slipknot
AC/DC did it with Back in Black.
I mean, that's the best example of it, obviously. But yeah, just for me, I love almost the whole entire album. Like, I think it goes up and down in their styles. The styles change, but I like the fact that it's kind of documenting everything they can possibly do. And there's just so many tracks off of there that I felt were so strong that I couldn't really. I debated whether or not this was my favorite Slipknot album, but I felt like it was the best representation of Slipknot for me.
Well, there you have it. That is both of our picks for our favorite and least favorite Slipknot albums.
We had some similar rankings and some very unsimilar rankings.
I went for.
I'm just saying.
I get it. I get it. Now, if any of you have a opinion that differs from ours, feel free to let us know in the comment section below.
Yeah, definitely give us your personal rankings, and maybe we could assess your opinions and tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do it then.
Yeah. Not everybody.
Have fun with your lives.